Or am I doing it? Because I hella and when I say
Okay.
I mean like with every yeah, so like maybe a sentence.
Maybe finish 2 sentences.
Put away phones. Laptops, please put in your bag. Phones should not be out. You should already have your binder out. First. Phone in bag. Phones in bag, please. Otherwise, I won't give Archie his phone back for 2 weeks. I'll have a break.
We're in your house. Shouldn't we get like bias or something?
Yeah, you do. I have a bias that I want you to do well.
So we do better with our phones. So we do better if we didn't have to hand in
Like with our phones, right?
Without your phone, you do better. Without.
Well, if I die while I'm skiing and I come calling you for help, how am I going to get better?
Then
If I'm
you would have died when you were.
If I injure myself.
But then you would have died when you were perfect, and you'll never get worse. Okay. Last day we're doing act and rule utilitarianism. You put the laptops away off your desks. Put them away in your bag. William, put all the laptops away in your bag. Like away. Archie is staring at me.
What?
Your laptop away in your bag.
Zane, put your laptop away.
Oh, yeah.
Bad boy.
Laptops away. Or are you writing? Okay. Excellent. Okay, last day. We did principle of utility. There's 2 types. There's act and rule. Just as a review. Act utilitarianism, you can add this if you don't have this down. As part of the summary notes from last day, each individual case is unique. You consider each one separately. You must seek the greatest particular good. And in this particular process, this type of utilitarianism, the ends will always justify the means. If you can get to a good end, and the means are kind of unpleasant, but the ends are better than the means are unpleasant, that's going to happen. Moral rules should be seen only as action guides. This type doesn't have absolutes. If I say there's nobody allowed to go outside during prep, but it would create a greater good if you're done your prep and you could go outside, then you should. These are like stop signs in New York, just rough guidelines. Individual circumstances can justify the breaking of any of the traditional moral rules. Act utilitarianism. So, this would be the just bed.
Sorry, it's like really
See?
interesting what they do.
Yeah, I know. This is why I don't like windows in a classroom. You should never have windows. I just realized I need to cover that window.
What do they do?
Terrible. Yeah, don't look at that. They're not doing anything. Nothing at all. They're not doing anything at all. If you can do some research and you'll end up needing to experiment on a few dozen people, but you have the potential to save thousands of lives, act utilitarianism. You should definitely do that thing so that you can save thousands of lives. Some of the worst atrocities we have in medical history are due to applications of act utilitarianism. The library has a book, I know because we did a project in class and a student ordered it, called Acres of Skin. In which a doctor went to a particular prison, and that was his description of seeing all of the people in the prison. He gave them a variety of diseases, syphilis, and such things, so that he could see the progression of what would happen. It's not that syphilis was incurable. You could cure it at that time. But he wanted to do experiments on humans at various stages of skin lesions, and in the hopes of coming up with different cures and more knowledge. And so he experimented on prisoners without their consent. We used to do a project on things like Unit 731, and the human experimentation that happened in Auschwitz and other places. And I no longer do because it's just so depressing. But justifications in each particular case, well, we're going to just watch humans swim in icy cold water until they drown. Now, yes, that is bad. But on the other hand, we're fighting a war. And it's really important to know how long sailors can swim in icy cold water. And so this knowledge will be incredibly useful, probably save thousands of lives. It will allow us to design new types of flotation devices and know how long we can keep people going.
So what's Unit 731?
I will allow you to look it up. There's a variety of experimentation that occurred during World War II that we use now as the most horrendous examples. I think Unit 731 was the Japanese unit. You had your hand up, you just put it down. Why don't you say what it was?
It was an Imperial Japanese experimentation sort of program where like Chinese civilians, just like prisoners of war in general, were just experimented on. Yeah.
And by experimented on, we mean things like how close can you withstand a flamethrower and still survive? If we put you outside with your hands and we encase them in water and allow them to completely freeze, what happens when we thaw them out 4 hours later? Like really horrendous things. Now, I don't want to blame, I just said Auschwitz, Unit 731. Canada, in Toronto, in a joint CIA/CSIS experiment during the Cold War, so after World War II, would take people who had been in an automobile accident, and they're like, I don't think they're going to make it. So they got cooperation of some doctors, and they wheeled them into a special room that had been outfitted to be radiologically sealed, so radiation wouldn't escape, and they exposed them to really high amounts of radiation to see what would happen to their tissues, because they want to know in the event of a nuclear war what happens to tissues.
What would happen?
They died, and the tissues would become, as we now know, necrotic and just damage them further. I don't think it really added to the sum total of human knowledge, but they wanted to do it, and they wanted to see what would happen. At the time, we didn't know a lot about radiation. Just before this was the time where if you wanted to get a new pair of shoes, you walked through the store, and they had live x-ray machines where you could stick your feet in, and you could see the bones of your toes fitting the shoe. You could see that it fit properly. And they didn't know things like, how much cancer? Cancer? No. And so they were just doing lots of stuff to see what would happen. They really didn't know. We didn't get a lot out of it other than radiation is dangerous. So the last moments of lots of people's loved ones' lives were wheeled into a strange room and then getting irradiated and hurt for a while before they died. So we, act utilitarians, would justify all of these, saying, well, if a greater good came out of it, well, there you go. That's fine. Now, if you do that all the time, rule utilitarianism considers the future. People are going to get angry if they know that CSIS is doing experimentation on its own citizens or even other citizens.
How much power does CSIS have in Canada?
In Canada? Have you ever heard of CSIS?
Yeah, but I thought it was like the
It's
intelligence
like the
agency.
Canadian FBI.
No, it's like the Canadian CIA. The Canadian FBI is more like RCMP because they're across Canada. Although not really, again, we don't have quite the equivalent of an FBI. But I would say RCMP probably comes closest. They're the secret intelligence services of Canada. Sorry, yes?
Yeah. I thought they're like just intelligence. Like, do they do like experiments with people?
Well, the CIA and CSIS were doing all sorts of wild things in the 60s.
Yeah.
If you want to justify any conspiracy theory, you just have to look up MK Ultra, and then you're like, oh, well, all governments are against us. We're all being programmed. They're probably all secret reptilian aliens. It must all be true because MK Ultra is wild. MK Ultra was the means by which they did all sorts of crazy things and justified it. And we know now because it's really hard to hide a conspiracy because it requires paperwork, and you can't really get rid of all the paperwork. And so eventually the paperwork came up. Yep.
Mr. Neufeld, do you believe in lizard people?
I haven't met one yet. So
Maybe you have, but you just don't know.
I may not know, but that's again, invisible dragon on my shoulder. I mean, Do I believe in something that I've never seen any evidence for the moment? Probably not.
What if
Some people do look kind of scaly, though. Yes?
What are your thoughts on aliens? Like, do you believe in aliens?
They're definitely out there.
They would be along the lines of lizard people. We have no evidence whatsoever to suggest that alien life
But that one
exists
in New Mexico.
anywhere in the universe
Definitely do.
other than planet Earth.
What about
Well, have
statistics?
scientists not found living,
It took us in a war.
You could put up your hand. Yes?
have scientists not found living, growing organisms on other planets?
No.
I'm pretty sure they have.
Find me the reference.
Okay.
There was a rock that was one of the ways we look for evidence is that when a big rock hits a planet, it explodes a bunch of little rocks that go into orbit. And then sometimes Earth hits those rocks, and those rocks land on our planet. The best place for those rocks to land for us to study is in the Arctic or the Antarctic, because then they're relatively pristine for thousands of years. And we've taken some of those rocks, and we've actually managed to figure out which planet they came from. And then some of those rocks, they have suggested that the minerals in one of them may be a product of a living thing. There's no evidence of a fossil, a living thing. It's just that the product might have been, or there's another process that would create it that we just haven't discovered yet that's inorganic.
Are we not aliens ourselves, though? The fact that, like, we started from, like, a plant organism when Earth was formed?
Maybe. But the word alien means other than us. So I said other than planet Earth, so I think that's covered. And you have evidence of alien life?
No.
Well, you just said there's definitely evidence.
I'm gonna think there's probably aliens out there. There's definitely life out there somewhere in the universe.
On what? On
It's
what?
ever expanding. There's no way we're the only living organisms out there.
Okay, that's a very broad and powerful claim. You said there's no way. Upon what evidence do you make that conclusion? I mean, Star Wars is a movie.
No.
The fact that the universe is infinite and you can't really get to the end of the universe.
Okay, I mean, size is a thing, but just to be clear, the universe is not infinite. I mean, it's infinite in the same way that like a circle's infinite. You can keep going around and around and around. If you could travel faster than light and you went the same direction the whole time, eventually you'd arrive back where you started. The universe is a closed circle. So it's not infinite, but it is expanding faster than the speed of light. So for our purposes, I will grant you, it is large, but so what? Lots of things are large.
So they're not, like, almost infinite
No,
possibilities?
expand, like, what is it about the infiniteness or the bigness that makes it life?
Because I'm just saying that because there's so much, there's like whole planets we haven't found yet, and there's definitely life somewhere out there.
So dragons definitely exist because there's lots of rocks we haven't looked under, and we haven't found one yet.
Aliens
I
are
don't
like
want to do it.
humans, like people like that look like humans, just like any like organism.
Like, yeah, no, I understand what you mean. I'm just saying, like, do we have evidence of that? Yeah.
If aliens don't exist, then how do they get on the star in the movie Alien? Like, think about it.
Movie, but yes, yes.
Think
it's
response.
really improbable for aliens or some kind of organic organism to not exist, as like there's like so many planets out there, and for life to not exist on just our planet is almost impossible.
You're playing the odds. You're saying there's so much out there, and life evolved here, maybe. So, I mean, if you believe in evolution, and abiogenesis in terms of the chemistry, that it must have also happened elsewhere.
Yeah.
Does that prove that?
No.
It is impossible statistically to make any assumptions on a sample of one.
Okay.
And we have only one sample, planet Earth.
So would that also make
No,
also
these
to assume that there isn't life?
hands, yeah. Yep, and then there.
Is it like Schrodinger's cat where it's just they both exist and don't exist until we find one? Or don't find one?
If you're speaking metaphorically, sure, because unicorns both exist and don't exist until we find one, then we know they do. So So the general assumption is we assume things don't exist until we have evidence for them. We did the whole it's really hard to prove a negative. If you meant literally, like it's a quantum event and they both exist and don't exist until we look at them, that only applies to really small quantum things, which have been as large as viruses. So, yeah. Yep. Yep.
What was the cat you were talking about?
Schrodinger's cat.
It's basically cat in box, put bad stuff in box. Cat is like, that may kill cat, and cat is both dead and alive until you open the box.
And just because it's not a literal cat,
Yeah.
it was an analogy to describe the weirdness for small particles of both being in one place and another place at the same time. However, the person who invented that, Schrodinger, made the analogy to show how stupid quantum was and must obviously be wrong, and accidentally came up with a great teaching example that we still use of why this is what actually the universe looks like at a really small fundamental level. Yep.
This is like another space topic. Is it true that it's more likely that humans will inhabit the atmosphere of Venus before the surface of Mars?
I have no idea. I'm not an expert. There is a lot of chemicals and energy in Venus, so
The
sure.
atmosphere of Venus.
But I have no idea. I am not. So, I won't take any more. I'll move on. One last thing. If you find the topic of alien life interesting, it is one of those areas that I think I can find. You can go to a variety of different communities and find a lot of pseudoscience. Health is full of them. Lots of areas are full of pseudoscience. If you go into any sort of science community and talk about intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, or just life in general, you will also find a lot of people who will talk about pseudoscience. You can't make a prediction off of a sample of one. However, the Drake equation was come up by Drake, and this purports to calculate the odds of life in the universe. Number of civilization in which humans could communicate. So this would be for intelligent life, but you could adjust this equation for non-intelligent. Mean rate of star formation, we know that. Fraction of stars that have planets, we now know that. Mean number of planets that could support life per star with planets, we don't know that. We're making guesstimates. We're seeing more of the universe now than we used to, but that is a very rough guesstimate. Fraction of life-supporting planets that develop life, we have no idea what that is. That could be an odds so low that we are literally the only one. It could be so high that they're a dime a dozen and we have no idea what that number is. Fraction of planets with life where life develops intelligence, we have no idea what that is. Is intelligence just a statistical anomaly? Things that are smart don't necessarily do better than things that are not smart. There are a lot of, if we looked at the planet and we're like, what is doing the best? We would say viruses and bacteria. They are thriving. We are a small, paltry sum by comparison. Fraction of intelligent civilization that develop communication, and then mean length of time that civilizations can communicate. So this is more about will we ever find them? You can put whatever numbers you want in here for most of these, and then come up with a statistic. And different scientists and different people who are really hopeful will put in different numbers and say, oh, we know these ones, but we don't know the other ones. And so if you're saying like we definitely know, we don't know. And then you get into the whole, well, let's say it is popular. The counter argument to there must be life because there's so many is if there is, where are they? Because we definitely should have heard them from now, and if we haven't, there is something out there that kills them because they should have been here if it was at all possible. Any civilization that's been around millions of years before us would be here by now, and we haven't found them.
If there was a civilization, why would they want to come to Earth? What if they didn't want us to figure out that they existed?
The existence of just aliens in general, if we're saying they're popular, there's got to be some species that's exploring the universe if it's possible to do, or we just hear from them. Light travels at a speed. There's ways that you could send a message. We've never heard a message. You could even send it in gravity waves if you're advanced enough. We've looked for that, haven't found any. Now it's a big universe. We haven't looked everywhere, but it is strangely silent. And one of the most popular theories right now is that if intelligent life exists, we are advertising our presence, and they're going to show up any day now and get rid of us because all we are is competition. Yes.
To be fair, isn't it kind of odd to believe that those alien things haven't happened on Earth, considering that there's a lot that the government just simply doesn't tell us because they don't think we should know?
It is very easy to assume things that seem plausible that are secret because you can say anything. And that is the madness that conspiracy theories lie. If you read MK Ultra, I'll give you, you will believe all sorts of things that the government can do. MK Ultra, they gave random people LSD, and then they tried to see if they could get them to commit crimes. Anything you've ever heard about sleeper agents who don't know that they're an assassin, who then wake up and be an assassin, they tried to do in MK Ultra. MK Ultra did wild stuff. But what it really shows that most of it didn't work. And you can't keep it a secret. Nothing gets kept a secret for a long time. The president couldn't keep an affair a secret in the White House while he was in power. Monica Lewinsky was still found out despite everybody wanting it to be a secret. So I'm going to do the last one there because it's not really on this. That is more on later, so I'll address that again when we do logic and reasoning. And it's roughly related because we're going to do deductive and inductive reasoning. If the rule is do not damage other people's property, under what circumstances would you think you can break that rule? Should it be never or all the time? Yes?
If the house is like, wait, for example, if a car is locked and someone left a baby in there, you break the window.
You could break a window to get in. There's a baby inside. Ben?
If you're like a firefighter and like they only can carry the axes to
Right.
help use.
And those are absolutely embedded in our law and our society. If you're a firefighter, you're preventing fire for other people. That's not even an act utilitarian. That's rule utilitarian. We build that. When could you break into someone's house illegally but feel morally justified? Yes.
If they stole your kid.
They stole your kid.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yep.
Kid. Wow.
You know that site I showed you about when teachers behave badly and professional ethics? There's one in there. It goes way back. I think you can find it, but it's not within the date range. You have to go to another part of the site. It involves Brentwood and a Brentwood teacher. There was a house parent here who actually broke into a house. A member of their house, a boarding student, went on leave without permission. So they did not have permission from their parents. The teacher, the house parent, knew exactly where they went. They went to a former student's house who lived nearby. And he was throwing a party. His parents weren't home. So he went over to tell him that he's got to come back to the house. He entered the house without permission to find the student. While he was in there, he noticed that there was some stolen Brentwood uniforms in there that had been missing from his own house because the student who's no longer at the school was also a member of this house parent's house previously. And he grabbed those uniforms and left the house with him and left with the student who had left without permission, let the parents know so they could deal with it. He went to court because he broke and entered. Now we're asking the lawyer about this because the lawyer came to visit us. They do every couple of years to remind us house parents, what are our legal ramifications to our decisions? What do we do? And we're like, the student he went and grabbed was not allowed to leave. There was open alcohol all throughout when he went in. I mean, legally, he wasn't allowed, so definitely this went to court. But on the other hand, the parents were really thankful he went and got the student. They probably prevented worse things happening to that student. That student ended up finishing the year, and the next year he was actually quite thankful that this house parent had done that. But he was still, the court did not find in the house parent's favor. And we're asked, like, what do you do? Because imagine if he didn't go. You know where the student is. You know that they're probably going to hurt themselves in some kind of way. You're acting as their parent. You can't reach their actual parents right now. Do you just let them sit there? Like, what would you do? And the lawyer's like, sometimes life just sucks. You got to pick what kind of wrong do you want to be. So he went in. All the parents were very happy with him. The only parent who wasn't was the parent of the child who didn't even go here. And so it worked out in the end. But, I mean, society-wise, he was absolutely wrong. The school actually had a consequence for that, a legal consequence. And this is ages ago, but not that long. I have to be careful because you would know some of the names.
So does that mean when you show up to a party that's like an open invitation, by entering their property, it's technically like breaking and entering?
If you weren't invited to the party, then yeah, you are breaking and entering. So if I know, like, you're hosting a party, this entire class shows up, I know that, you know, my children are there, and I'm going to go get them. I am trespassing as soon as I step foot on that property if you haven't allowed me there.
Is it still breaking and entering if I don't break anything?
Yes. Yeah. You don't have to smash things to be breaking and entering. You're just putting foot on the property. Your mere presence is breaking it. Yeah. Yep.
Why didn't he just knock?
Why didn't he just knock? Oh, he did. If you read the whole police report, like, he knocked, the student opened the door, he's like, is so-and-so here? And then he saw so-and-so, and the guy said, no. And so he just walked past him, got the student, saw the stolen uniform items, I think there were sportswear that were labeled with other students' names, grabbed them, left the house. So first of all, theft. He knew they were stolen, but at the time, could he have proven that they were stolen?
No.
He proved it when he went back and said, you said that these things were missing. Is this your missing things? Yeah. Okay, now he knows for sure. But police aren't allowed to just enter your house if they don't have absolute proof that their stuff is, that your stuff is there. There's a lot of rules about when you're allowed. We don't want a police state where police can just check and do the evidence afterwards. So, was he allowed to do it? No. He did knock first. He didn't just go running in there. But then he just walked in when he saw his student. What situations could you think of where you would feel morally right, even if you're there's legal consequences? This is not fire trucks, not things we've already built into law. Yeah. And then,
If someone's gonna do a really, really, really bad thing and you can stop them.
yeah. But for an example, what's the really, really bad thing? Yeah.
Someone's building a nuke in their basement and they're about to set it off, so you have to go stop them.
This is a movie really bad thing. So, Jack Bauer, yes.
You see an old lady choking through the window, and no one's there to save her.
So you run in and you save her. And
But
now
you're
she's very angry with you.
But you're
You
breaking
entered her
the law.
home. She's a little bit dementia, so yeah.
Should
Her family shows up and she's like, I don't know why she came in. I was fine. But morally, you know, you're right. There's a hand up over here. You would disagree.
No, well,
Do you have an example where you would break in?
do I have an example where I break in? To something
Yeah, and you would
else?
feel morally justified regardless of the consequences.
Maybe if, like, I gotta agree, who's said that before? If someone, like, if I was, like, walking my dog, someone kind of just, like, snatched it, ran into their house, I'd probably follow them. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh, shoot, I can't break the law.
I can't break the law.
I want to buy
Yeah.
a dog. Like, that's probably it. Or if I saw, like, I don't know, somebody, like, I get it's, like, maybe some will say it's none of your business, but if I saw, like, someone, I don't know, abusing their child, like, hitting them, I'd probably go knock on the door, be like, hey, man, why are you doing that?
Hey,
You know?
hey, are you abusing your child?
Hey man.
Nothing.
No.
No, yeah.
He got out of the basement.
So, I think we can see there's times when act utilitarianism does seem to make sense, where we're going, I don't actually care what the rules are. This situation hasn't been thought of before. We need to jump in. If there's a news article, I think it just came out in the last week. Some poor gentleman in Toronto had his SUV stolen. He had an Apple tag in it, and he tracked it. It moved all over Toronto, ended up in a port in Ontario. He updated the police at every step. They actually found it at the port. He's like, yeah, it's right there. It's right in that thing. But by the time it was in the port, the RCMP is like, that's out of our jurisdiction. We're not allowed to open that. Like, there's laws. Like, RCMP doesn't have authority in the port. You have to go to the port police. So then he goes to the port police, and they're like, we have to investigate first. By the time they're investigating, that ship literally is sailed. Loses track of it for like 6 weeks, I think, and then all of a sudden, pops up on the map again. It's in Dubai in a used car lot. He actually hired someone in Dubai to go take a picture of it in the lot. And apparently, this happens all the time. Cars are picked up from elsewhere in the world, they're shipped to a completely different country, and then sold as pricey new cars. He really wanted to break in and get his car back. It's his stuff. He knows where it is. But the police officer is bound. The police officer can't break the law. Be a police officer and break the law. I'm sure that's never happened. And of course, he doesn't have the means at the time, but like his stuff is in there. Now, if it had been a child, pet. So the rule, do not damage other people's property. One in Canada that is so common, the police would actually be reluctant to enforce it, even if you were found guilty, is in Canada, is very cold. And so if you are in an area that is minus 30 and you're going to freeze to death, there are shelters that you can break into. We actually build some shelters that you can that are open all the time. I believe someone told me that in their town it's illegal to lock your car doors. Anybody live in this town? It's due to bears wandering in, so you're allowed to take shelter.
Like, I have cousins who live in Alaska. Like
That's the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that. So, if you're breaking in to find shelter, that seems like a reasonable thing to do. There's a bear, I'm not here to harm your stuff. You are just helping me live. And life takes more priority over property, regardless of what the law says. Now, of course, breaking in to have a party, this poor gentleman was doing a home remodel. While he was doing the home remodel on the weekend, about 120 kids showed up, had a huge party, broke the toilet bowl, so they ran all over the place. All of the water was there, and completely destroyed his home. That is obviously an example of breaking it for no particular reason that could be justified. So we have both of them. Yes?
Back to that bear thing. My town is something similar to that, where if there's a bear, you can go to anyone's house and like knock on their door, and they'll usually let you in, unless you're like a really, really, really bad person.
I like the usually. Not you. And keep it locked. Oh. Rule, do not damage the environment. Now, this is obviously, there's no particular reason why you can't not use plastic bags. Had a boomer get so mad about that plastic bag ban here in Oregon that he bragged about, back in my day, we would just throw plastic bags in the river all the time. Okay, what's your point? On the other hand, that rule is broken all the time because we do have to farm in order to produce food to allow people to live. Farming absolutely takes away from the environment. If you have farmland, it's usually a monoculture crop or a couple crops. It is not nearly as resource intensive in terms of supporting the environment as what was ever there before. Our marshlands are disappearing. Those are what protect us against things like sea surges and storms because they absorb the extra water, turn them into farmland, flooding becomes more common, biodiversity goes down, everything gets a little bit worse. One of the great arguments over organic versus regular, I don't want to say non-organic because non-organic is a rock. It's organic, I mean everything's organic. But anyway, in that sort of things. If you're not using fertilizers, then you are using much more land. And that land could have been kept as the natural forest or marshland or anything. And so you actually are having a huge impact on the environment by growing organic. On the other hand, if you're growing things more intensely, you are using more fertilizers. Fertilizers have run off into the rivers that also damage the environment. It turns out to mostly be a wash. Both damage the environment roughly equally. It's just what are you saving? The runoff versus the more land. But we do have to struggle with the fact that we can't always do the best thing because there are lots of priorities. Some examples of act-utilitarianism. The Oklahoma City fire major faces punishment within the department after driving a burn patient to the hospital due to an ambulance delay. He was waiting for an ambulance. The ambulance didn't come. The patient was at risk of dying, so the fire chief said, "Get in my truck, drove him to the hospital, got him there, got treatment. He is now legally, he was, well, legally at the time that this first came out, facing punishment for doing so. Now, this wasn't the ambulance would have been there a second later, he made the wrong decision. The ambulance still wouldn't have been there. But why would you even have the rule that the firefighter can't drive the burn victim there? Like, why does the rule even exist? Yeah.
So, in case the firefighter's driving the guy to his, like, hospital, but he brings him to the firefighter's house instead and kidnaps him?
Yes, the firefighter could be a person with evil intent, but let's assume that no firefighter is. Yes?
Would it be in case the patient died in his car, like he would be responsible for it?
He'd be responsible for that. The fire department would be responsible for that. And does he have all the equipment in his truck in order to help someone? No. So it is a bad idea to let people do that.
And he also may be needed on the scene still.
He's abandoning his post. This is the fire major. He's supposed to be directing things. Sure, he may feel that this takes priority, but it's also a major problem if your commander isn't there. And so he still has a disciplinary hearing over this. I think he was, I have to go double check the case because at the time it hadn't happened yet. It's definitely happened by now. But I think he was actually, he faced disciplinary action and he did get consequences for it. But in the eyes of everybody in the town, what would they think?
Good job.
Good job. Hero, you did act utilitarianism. We all agree. Yeah, sometimes the law is stupid, but stupid law. You are a better person for not obeying the law because of that. So these are examples of act utilitarianism. Now, we have a problem. In all of these, I am asking you how to measure good. Because that, I've just assumed in all of these statements that it is a measurable thing. You can measure the good that you can produce. So I would like you, I haven't taken attendance yet, so I'm not going to put you in groups. I want you to gather your people, and I want you to come up with like 3 or 4. How would you measure good? For a country, for a person, for a decision, how would you measure the good?
Actually, no. Purple uses the dark side.
Measure the good.
Yeah, no. Purple lightsaber means that you're on the dark side. Like you use dark powers.
No. Okay, for the benefit of the one group I overheard, realistic today's society measure good, not Star Wars.
I'm guessing NI equals
Really?
like how many people?
What does G stand for?
G is like total good.
Realistic.
Better quality of life.
How many?
Angry birds.
That's original. It's like
So the total good is the positive impact times the number of things impacted by the negative impact.
Like everything you do has to be.
Timmy, Ben, Emily, Archie, Zoe, Lisa. No, Lisa. Felix, Zane, Casey's present, Annabelle, Ava, Tara. What? Yeah, hold it. Yes. Violet, Brandon, Hugo, Parker, and Hank. Kate, and finished.
Oh, you're making a
Your voice has like such a
What?
Don't say us, Frank.
Okay, wait, what about
Okay.
It's the opposite.
What group are you playing? Okay. Paying attention, I'm just going to go around. I want some measures, and then I can discuss them. I'm going to go around like this. Give me what you think your best one is. Someone's already said it. You got to take your second best one. This group, what do you got?
Makes the quality of life for the most amount of people better.
Right, but measure. How do you measure that?
Not bad. You measure it in centimeters.
Okay, I want to know. Okay, you said quality of life. So, gentlemen, I've asked for your attention. Listening to the other group. You said quality of life, so I want to stick with that. If you wanted to know how the quality of life was, I want to know if everybody in here, what would you pick to measure that? What question would you ask everybody, or what would you measure?
Measure your quality of life.
Yeah.
How happy you are, how healthy you are.
Okay, you said happy and healthy. Pick one, and then how would you measure it?
Healthy. Like
Healthy, okay.
functionality.
So you have all your limbs.
There you go.
Healthy.
That's measuring good.
I'll go with functionality, because there is a variety of ways you could do, like, I don't know, we could do the beep test again. How many of you have ever done the beep test? Yeah, we measure your health. You run back. Do they still do that here? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to say beep test. I'm going to ask the next group. How would you measure the good? How many groups are there? 2?
Or just a whole group.
Okay, Hugo?
We're going group. We have an actual formula.
Oh, you have a formula. What's the formula?
Okay. Yeah, so total good is positive impact times the number of things it affected, subtracted by the negative impact, multiplied by 2.
Why?
Why is there
Okay.
two?
To make it
Balance.
so like,
Why is there two?
to make it like the equality, like if it's like equal, to be more balanced towards positive, to make it like more like easier to be, negative, because like equal is like
Literally
opposite.
Okay, I want to hold you there because you gave me a formula, which is great, but I'm not actually. This is how you would overall maybe weigh the goods, but I'm not asking. I'm asking for not the result. I'm asking for the measuring stick. So what number goes into there, and how did you measure it?
So I thought of like maybe like a scale, like 0 is like not very much. It's like a terrible impact. Or like 10 is like a big impact. And
No. Just tell me that. The scale again. I don't even care that much about the scale. So what is it you are measuring from 0 to infinity? Where does that number come from?
How good something is.
Yeah, but that's the question.
Like
What are you measuring? I'm going to move. Yeah? Is your hand up?
Isn't there a happy life index?
Yes?
There is a happy life index.
There is the happy life index. How do they get that?
They get it from like the GDP and like
What did you say? You said GDP, did you not?
I don't know.
Yeah, gross domestic product. There's a lot of criticism on that.
And a lot more. But I don't know.
There's a lot more. One of the ways we judge a country, are they happy, are they doing good, is the gross domestic product.
Actually, talking about that.
Excuse me.
That is only a measure of its economy. But the theory, if you're using this, is if its economy is doing well, then many of the citizens must also doing well. So it's an indirect measure, but it is a measure. So you can use that. So this is an actual measure. So for next day, I want you to think not about how we can use the numbers, but what literally will you measure? Like I might measure the number of A's in a class. Pardon?
Blue lightsaber are good.
Yeah, that's
Color of your lightsaber.
not Star Wars.
No,
Not Star Wars.
they deter